gobygal, and in this episode I thought I'd take a break from explaining how to set an aquarium, and before I move on to the next step I thought I'd share with you a couple of books I find essential and very good to have in your fish collection so you can have a base of knowledge so you don't necessarily have to keep looking it up and so you have a little bit of reference with you. So, one of the first books I'd recommend, it wasn't my first fish book in my collection, but it's probably a pretty good, a well-rounded fish book. It's very good. It covers a little bit in all three, fresh, brackish, and saltwater. So that's what makes it good. It'll cover all the basic information that it'll cover in any book. It has all the information. It's pretty good, especially unless you know. So if you don't know what kind of aquarium you want, or you are considering multiple, and you like having a pretty good solid base, this will be a very good book to get. They'll have it in several stores. It's a very good book, pretty thick. It has lots of colorful pictures inside and gives pretty good recommendations on what kind of fish to get. So that's a good general book. But if you already know what kind of fish aquarium you're going to get, like let's say freshwater, I would recommend the Freshwater for Dummies book, because this is also, it has all the good solid base for freshwater and goes into breeding. It's a pretty good solid base for freshwater. Now again, just a note, you don't have to do what I did with any of these books. I have read a good portion of these books front to back, memorized them. I can reference any of them at will. I know exactly what book to pull for what question. So you don't have to do that, but just like having it so you can search to the right section. Like let's say you want to search breeding, you would maybe go to like let's spawn. You'd go there, you'd check the index, you'd go to the fish section, you'd go to the right section, you'd look it up, maybe browse it, read in depth. That's how you can use a bunch of these references. So just recap. So general book, general freshwater. And also, if you are considering getting some plants for your freshwater book, this is a pretty good book for freshwater plants if you're considering having a live planted. It's not necessary, but I like having live plants. So this gives you a pretty good description of the good selection. Now saltwater, there's a couple of different aspects. Again, another for dummies. I like this series for fish books. It has a pretty good description for fish, so saltwater for dummies if you're considering saltwater. And two other more specific books, depending on if you like invertebrates and want more of and want to add some invertebrates instead of having a fish only. This is a really good book to have, the marine invertebrates. It'll cover starfish, some corals, crabs. It pretty much covers at least every category of invertebrates, maybe not every example, but it gives a really solid, it's like a miniature, maybe half the size of a encyclopedia worth of invertebrates. And if you do want to go into corals, this is another series I like, another series of fish books. This is also a base of in-depth of how to care for corals, even though it's pretty thin. It's still really good and has some good examples for beginners. So this book for corals. Now brackish water, I tried setting up with brackish water, and I decided to switch it to saltwater. But if you are going to go to brackish water, I don't own that many books, but the one I do have, I'd recommend you purchase if you're going into brackish water. This book, Brackish Water Fishes, it'll give you a pretty good description of how to set up a brackish water aquarium. It's pretty thick. It's really good. It'll tell you exactly what kind of things you can put in. Don't necessarily believe people. Someone told me to put a freshwater fish in a brackish water tank. They did not survive for more than 15 minutes. So check this book, because guppies actually in some live bears do have the capacity to survive in from freshwater to brackish and even full salt water, but don't do that necessarily unless you check this book and know that it's possible. And just P.S., do not put zebra danios in a saltwater tank. That will not go well. So those are the basic ones. Now there's some other, and also betas. There's two other more specific setups. If you want to get a beta, just a little beta wall, this book is your best friend. Get this book. It's a really good setup. Gives in-depth analysis. There's a lot of thin books like this one that covers specific fish, and they're all pretty good. So this is the book you want to get for a betta bowl. Now koi, I'm also trying to set up a koi pond, not too successfully. I've made several attempts, but koi books, I don't own these books, but also just go to the library. They usually will have pretty good selection. Sometimes I'll just go there, get a whole bunch of books on a topic like koi. These are 2 books I picked up from the library at koi. I've got pretty much a stack of 10 other ones in a bag just behind the camera. So these are some books I got about koi. Just I browse them, look for as much as I can on a subject. Also, so in some more specific books, like let's say if your fish gets sick, run to the library or the bookstore and maybe check out this book, Common Fish Diseases. This is really good, help with diagnosis, help with treatment. This is a really good book to have. If you're worried about getting fish diseases, get it maybe earlier so you don't have to get it right when fish get sick. But also the freshwater book for dummies. There's also some other books that will mention fish disease and about treatment, but this is a good one for mostly freshwater. It covers saltwater a little bit, but it's more about freshwater. Now, breeding is another thing that some aquarists like to do, and I have a couple of books to recommend for breeding. This one is very good for breeding freshwater fish. So this is breeding for freshwater fish. I own this one. I've read through. It rates them. It's very good for if you want to start breeding. It'll tell you which ones to start with. Now, if you have saltwater fish and you notice that you have a pair or want to get a pair, this book, I got this one at the library, but this would be a pretty good book to get. This is what it looks like. You'll probably want to get this one if you want to try breeding saltwater fish. I haven't had much success, but I'm trying. I have multiple pairs of fish, so that's what I'm going for. Another good book to have when you're breeding, or if you want to get your fish quality food, another thing I got at the library, Cultivating Live Foods, because one of the many tips that books will tell you to get your fish to breed is give them lots of live food, because that's a thing that happens with fish in the wild. In the wild during spring when they have kids, it's a lot of rain, it'll flush a lot of worms and bugs and all this fresh food into the river. Pretty much saying there's a lot of food here, it's a good time to have kids because they'll find a lot of food. And maybe another book I'd recommend for finding fish, another good fish encyclopedia, would be this one. This is a very, very good book. You'll find lots of different types of fish in here, fresh and saltwater. There's no brackish water fish in here, but very good basic fish book if you want to look at books. Just browse through. You can pretty much flip to any page through fish families. You'll see descriptions. You'll see what sort of food they eat. You'll see lots of different things in both freshwater and saltwater. So that's pretty much all I have to say about fish books. I'll get to the next section shortly, so just make sure to get a few good books that you saw from this selection or your own. Just find some good fish books with a pretty good solid base of information. And yeah. Actually, before I end this video, I'm having some trouble finding that other fish book, but the other fish book, it's little, it's green, and it's called 101 Best Beginner Saltwater Fishes. It also has an extra section of fish to avoid for beginners and that are just very hard to avoid, are very hard to take care of. It's a very good book for saltwater fish. It's similar to this one, but also has some other good, more in-depth about saltwater tanks. So, another book. So, check these books out, look at them, get to know them, and that's it.